I actually enjoy the work.
Meet Matthew Horncastle.
And it's this huge machine.
He runs one of New Zealand's largest residential building companies.
You know that you come in for a lot of criticism sometimes.
And he's not shy of saying a few things.
I watched the government's overreaction to COVID.
So how did he build his empire?
We're making all this money and the market collapses. And there's a very, very serious chance that we're going to go broke.
And is something new on the horizon?
I do not want to be a politician. But
Let's meet for coffee. Proudly brought to you by Black and White Coffee Cartel. Delicious food and beautiful coffee.
Matthew Horncastle, welcome to Black and White Herwood. How are you?
very, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you. This food here, by the way, I've got to say it's amazing. This isn't helping our diet, but I'll tell you what, the food here at Black and White is amazing. This is some kind of strawberry drink which I haven't tried before. I might try it now, actually.
Yeah, I'll try my coffee.
Oh, it sort of tastes healthy, so the strawberry drink, it's lovely. Anyway.
The black coffee's great.
It is. Oh, thank you. Yes, that's for me. Thank you, sir. So you've just had a baby.
Yes, I have.
How's that going?
So before my partner, I sort of disregarded children and childbirth because I was sort of the school of thought, if everyone does it, it can't be that hard. Like every human since the beginning of time's had a baby.
That's what I think.
Surely it's not that hard.
Yeah, but...
There is a but.
Yes.
When you go through it, and my partner will murder me if I tell the story publicly, but when you go through it, you're like, oh my God, this is Discovery Channel, and my partner's right there. It is very, very serious, and you have such a deep respect afterwards for the woman, your partner, the experience, the family, the community. I know it's very cheesy, but it does change you. And it's an amazing experience, but also like mortifying.
I don't know you very well, but I'm thinking, has it softened you?
I think it's done both. So like my feeling for my partner softened, my feeling obviously for my child softened, my feeling for my community is significantly softened. Like I have this real deep love and this real deep care for the community, for things I consider good. And then for things that I consider bad and destructive, it's hardened me because I'm like, those ideas, those values, those things, we need to stop them for my child and for my community to have a future. So it's like a dichotomy, a yin-yang, where you're harder on one side and softer on the other.
Yeah. Where does your energy come from? I mean, obviously, I follow you on social media and you post a lot, you text a lot.
An absurd amount of coffee. No, look, when you can stack wins each day, you can self-fuel. And so when I'm doing things I like with people I like, and getting wins and getting tangible victories, it's just like living on a perpetual dopamine rush where you're just like, I reckon we can do that hard. Okay, we did it. Oh, cool. Well, since we did that, I reckon we can do this. So you're fueled off the achievement of hitting your next thing or your last thing, and then the ambition of your next thing, which is really cool. And then obviously, like, there's a reality. You need to sleep. I take my sleep seriously. Not that I'm sleeping very much anymore.
What is that?
It's an
is
Aura
it like
ring.
a Samsung thing?
Yeah, so
it's
an Aura ring.
Yes.
And so it's essentially like a little computer. And so that tells me how many minutes, hours I slept, what my heart rate is. What it essentially means, that it means you can track your vitals and still wear a cool watch.
You've built a building empire in New Zealand, and how important do you think it is to have the right staff with you? Because if you've got your name's essentially on the mantle, right? So you've got to make sure the staff you have are completely on your side, right?
Yeah.
How important has that been for you?
When it's interesting when you say what is the right staff, because what I've found in my life, I've had some extremely educated people, some people that have achieved some amazing things, put them in a high-paying role with all the right KPIs where everything should have worked, everything should be right, this should happen, that should happen, cause effect, and it's been an absolute disaster. And then I've had people who shouldn't have worked, where they've come from the wrong side of the tracks, they didn't have the right support, they didn't have the right education, nothing was there for them, and that person won.
Yeah.
So, and one was for the purpose of this, like achieving their business unit's outcome. If the person has work ethic, a severe work ethic, and sometimes it's very hard to tell who has work ethic, but work ethic, they need to care about their thing. So if they're a project manager, they have to care about schedules, care about building. If they're a designer, they have to care about drawing. They need to have a care for the company, like a custodian. I'm the caretaker of this company and I need to make sure the company survives. The person that will clean the toilet in the customer toilet, so if a customer ever went in, it looks perfect. Like that real deep care where when no one's looking, they still do the right thing. I come from a construction family, so everyone in my family was in construction. My father had one of the largest privately owned builders in New Zealand called Horncastle Homes. He did really well. But generation before him, he comes from the West Coast. He won't like me talking about, but he had a real hard life. Like he overcome a lot of adversity and he had real challenge in his life. Now, I'm from his first marriage, so I grew up with my mother in Nelson. So it was me and her. My mum was a builder. She was the only female master builder in New Zealand. And she would build, like, when I say builder, she wasn't actually physically a builder, she was a developer. She'd build like 6 homes a year. So we lived a life growing up that was probably middle class, upper middle class with my mother. And then my father, when I turned about 11, the trappings of his wealth started to come through. So all of a sudden it was like, whoa, my dad has money. You don't know when you're a kid. And so there's the houses and the cars and that standard of living. And when you're a kid, you struggle to understand the world. So you pick sides and you have dumb decisions. So I was like, I'm with my mum, like my dad has all these things, like sort of an adverse, not like an adversarial, kids, they don't quite understand. And so anyway, I come through life and I leave home when I'm 14, I left school when I was 16, and I got a building apprenticeship with my cousin on the West Coast building cow sheds. And so I go from that, and the good thing about when you're in construction and you're building, everyone owns a business. So when you're with someone, the plumber owns his business, the electrician owns his business, the plasterer owns his business. So especially in a small town, construction, it's this real culture of business ownership. So I made a business, right? Because everyone else had a business. So in the weekend, I'd build decks and fences, et cetera, et cetera. And then when I turned 18, the earthquakes happened. And my father says to me, you need to come here. I don't quite understand what's going to happen, but you need to come here. So I come to Christchurch from the West Coast and I start doing building contract work. I start doing a little bit of temporary fencing. So I have a small service business, and this is where I had my business partner, Blair. I'll make it really quick. So we have this business. I get the call from my father's company saying, do you want to come into the Empire? And I'm like, cool. And so I leave my business. I say to Blair, hey, how much money you've got? I take all the money he's got and sell him half the business because I thought I would never go back. And so Blair runs my business as a 50-50 partnership. I go into the family business. And my father, he's a great man, but he is the epitome of the tough property baby boomer, that real hardness. And we come to a point where the family element, the toughness element, I physically couldn't work for him. And so I left him and I went back to my business, and my business was going really well. We had 3 business units. We were doing temporary fencing, building and IT services, and each business unit was making $200,000 a year, and I was very young. I was probably 22. And so we think, this is how business works. the way we get to be millionaires, that was the thing back then, you want to be a millionaire, is we need 5 businesses doing all these things. But then we wanted $1 million each, so we made 10 businesses. And as you can imagine, we're making all these businesses and we have fences and decking and waste management and solar panels and all these things, and the rails start to fall off and we're losing money. And there's a very, very serious chance that we were going to go broke. And so we're going through these weeks and it was absolutely awful. We would have to sell a trailer or a ute to meet the redundancy payments that week, like a real hard time. And I said to Blair, we've got to sell everything, get rid of downsize the staff, make the staff redundant. We have to make it through this and we have to pick one thing to do. And we picked houses. But they were traditional houses like what you know. And so we would buy a block of land and we would build a house. And so as we're reducing these other businesses, we're building a few houses and we had no money whatsoever. We had cash flow, which business owners will understand, but we had no money. And so one day we're driving and I said to Blair, I want to be part of the rebuild. And he's like, cool, we've got no money. I'm like, but we can do something. And there was a block of land for sale for $150,000 and it had 1 3-bedroom house design sitting on the house. And the block was for sale for $500 a square metre, so it's roughly like $60,000. And so we contract this site and I sit down one evening in our home, because Blair and I always lived together, and I drew, instead of 1 3-bedroom house, I drew 3 1-bedroom houses. Now that 1 3-bedroom house would have sold for approximately $650,000, give or take. And I designed these 3 1-bedroom houses and I called a local agent. I'm like, how much would you sell one of these for? And he's like, oh, I just sold one for $330,000. Now, 330 times 3 is $1 million. Very big difference between 650 and $1 million. And so we cost it and we're like, wow. And so we're off. And so we go from building 10 houses to 30 to 100 to 300 to 500. So Williams Corporation goes from $1 million in turnover to $350 million of turnover in 5 years. So we're like a tech company, 200-300% growth every year, expanding offices through New Zealand, expanding offices through Australia. This absolutely wild ride. And as we go through it, we were having issues like, back as we headed up to the peak of the market, our monthly bills were like $30 million. And if I called, say, ANZ Bank, their largest customer limit at the time was like 40 million. And so I called every single bank and I worked out that even if I hit the trading customer limit for every single bank in New Zealand, we would run out of money in 6 months. And so we made our own bank. So we made this wholesale finance company and we raised hundreds of millions of dollars. And everything is amazing, right? We've got the great idea. We're so clever. We've done all these things. We've got 250 staff. We're making all this money. And the market collapses. So,
And what year is this?
this is 2022. Yeah. And so at that time, we're carrying $1 billion work in progress. So that's our pipeline of work.
Yeah.
It's about 40% built. So we're about 400 million into this $1 billion position. It was 1,300 houses at the time. And we had just sold 100 houses in a single month, $75 million month. And I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this for the absurdity of it all. And so we're king of the world, and then the market, we go from 100 houses in a month, 75 million, to 3 houses in a month in 18 months.
Wow.
So volumes went from 100 to 3, right? Values dropped by 20%. So our $1 billion position is now worth 800 million, 200 million less. And it's this really horrible time because you're like, can we do it? How do we do it? How far low is it going to go? And so we had to start reducing our head count because we had at that time, it cost us $2 million a month in overhead and $4 million a month in interest. So we're $6 million a month to get to zero. And it's this huge machine that now has no market. And so we have to reduce the size of the machine as quickly as possible while still finishing the houses we had committed to our customers. But some of the blocks of land we had to sell, some of them we had to build. Capital was an absolute nightmare. The media was really hard on us. So the media's writing articles every day about how we're downsizing staff and will we make it, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, we downsized from 250 staff down to about 70 at the moment. We diversify from only property management into development to development and surrounding services. So we now do property management, mortgages, insurance, resale of property. So we now capture that greater margin around the house sale, and we survive the cycle, right? And
did you survive the cycle by, do you think, A, sheer luck, B, the sheer scale of the company to begin with, which means when you downsized, you could still survive? Or was it a bit of both, do you think?
Good question. We had management that failing wasn't an option, and management was comfortable to sell all of their personal positions at severely discounted prices to throw that money into the company. So we had a very committed management structure that said this company needs to survive. What cash can we get? Put it on the table. And then that gave our funders heaps of confidence to back us. And also we weren't traditionally funded. Almost 100% of our funding comes from individuals. So like we don't have to report to insert Australian bank. We're reporting to Mr. Smith, who it's not Mr. Smith's not a real person. Mr. Smith, who has sold 2 or 3 commercial buildings, has $50 million and lends us 10. And he's a person, and I can talk to him and I can say, we've got these settlements on this day, this on that day. So we were funded by people. We had very committed management. And then, as always, you get some luck, right? There's a few days where you get a win come in that you weren't expecting and you're like, wow, okay, good. So luck is always a component. We were the luckiest thing we had, which was an accident. 50% of our work was in Christchurch. That was the luck. Because if it was the other way round, it would have been significant. Because Auckland and Wellington and Tauranga took huge losses. But we were only about like 20% Auckland, 20% Wellington, 10% Tauranga, 50% Christchurch.
So now it's 2025. Your company is doing pretty well now.
Yeah.
How big is the company in comparison to other building companies in New Zealand?
Good question. This year, roughly our sales will be about 250. So call that like 180 to 200 million. Our settlements will be about the same, about 250 settlements. I think our settlements this year will be about 200 million. How big is that compared to other companies? Pretty big, right? Like you have a handful of players that would beat us. You have Mike Greer, who would be bigger than us. You would have Fletcher's, but Fletcher's don't really count because they're a big public listed firm, and their delivery so. Their real value is the supply chains they own. They own placemakers and pink bats and jib. That's the real Fletcher value. How many individuals operate at the size we do in the residential space? You less than one hand. It'd be less than 5 people that have businesses of that size and scale. So pretty big.
You spoke earlier about the media trying to push you down personally, but also the company when things were difficult. Do you think that's just part of New Zealand's tall poppy syndrome? Because you know that you come in for a lot of criticism sometimes, but I get the impression you've learned to manage it and almost water off a duck's back now.
There were things in hindsight that were legitimate journalism or legitimate criticism, right? I was a 24-year-old driving around a white Rolls Royce with a gold watch. So like there were certain decisions that I made that puts me there for legitimate criticism and not legitimate criticism.
Because at one stage, I remember at one stage you did like to flaunt your wealth, but I've noticed you've toned that down.
Correct.
Why have you toned that down? I always like looking at the private jets.
It's probably getting older as well. When you first, what's the saying? Nouveau riche, new money, right? When you first get to experience that, remember, I'm just a person. And when a person gets to experience something for the first time, it's exciting and it's cool, and you want to show people that you did it, and it's all this big exciting thing. And then after a while, that's your standard of living, and then you sort of just focus on what you actually enjoy. And I'm very fortunate, I actually enjoy the work. Like I love going to work. I love hitting the office. I love my first coffee and turning on my computer and talking to my people about what we're doing today. That's something that brings me a lot of fulfillment. So it's partially marketing myself in a better manner. It's partially I don't care as much about those things. They don't interest me, so my communication follows what interests me. So at the moment, I'm interested in Williams Corporation, I'm interested obviously in my baby and my family, and I'm interested in a conservative political value and bringing New Zealand back from what I believe is too left-wing to a more centre or more right-wing based political
That's an excellent segue. You have become more political, and it only seems perhaps even in recent months. Why?
I watch... Objectively, as I look through my life, all of the things that I witnessed that I believe caused harm for people came from poor quality government decisions. So like a few examples, right? I watched really bad behaviour from council with zoning, consent times, costs, and I watched how harmful that reduced supply and that higher prices to the population. So like our housing crisis. I watched the government's overreaction to COVID, and I watched how harmful that was to everyone that had a business. And then I'm now seeing the sign of, in my opinion, we've made positive steps with the current government. I believe they're heading more towards a better future than a worse future. But I can see that if we make certain choices, our debt, our supply of assets, our wealth will continue to deteriorate and the country will suffer. And I have a duty of care to myself because I want to live a happy and prosperous life. I have a duty of care to my family. I have a duty of care to my customers. If my customers buy a house and they're taxed to oblivion, and I could have shifted society's direction and looked after them better, and I don't do that, I'm letting my customers down. So it's about using the resources and the toughness that I've acquired through my business journey to do what I believe is the right thing for our country. And that is me just articulating clearly to people, there's a different way of thinking. And I try to keep it civil. Every now and again I get a bit grumpy, but...
Yeah. This sounds like a man that's very much considering running for public office. Have any of the New Zealand political parties approached you?
We talk to...
Or have you approached them?
We speak to them. Look, I would love nothing more than to spend my life as a capitalist. I do not want to be a politician. But if the current politicians keep putting layer on layer of law, layer and layer of taxes, layer and layer of debt, and they leave the society in a manner where I see my child has no hope of wealth, prosperity, happiness, freedom, because he's locked into 60% taxes and 100% government debt of GDP, I'm not going to allow that. So if I have to, but I've got some steps I have to do. So Williams Corporation, we're going to take it public in 2027, so 1.5, 2 years away. So I need to take my current company public. Once it's public, I would have to do probably 5 years minimum as the CEO, so the investors have stability, preferably the rest of my life. So preferably, my best outcome, I take it public, and for the rest of my life, I grow Williams Corporation. I get to live as a merchant capitalist. If we don't get government debt under control, freedom of people, freedom of trade under control, if we don't have New Zealand getting richer instead of poorer, I'll have a crack at running. And if I run to win.
And what political party would you go for?
If you wanted to win, you'd have to go through national, like what Luxton did.
Have you had informal
No,
discussions?
because this is 10 years till I can get there, right?
10 years? So who knows what's happening in 10 years?
Again, I don't want to. My best case is Luxton, Winston, and Seymour all pull us slightly more right, reduce taxes a little bit, reduce debt a little bit, get us more on track instead of less on track, and I can just trade as a capitalist.
Do you think they'll win the next election?
Yeah.
By a decent margin, do you think?
2 or 3%. I think it's becoming cool to be self-sufficient. It's becoming cool to look after your body. It's becoming cool to support
Be less
yourself.
reliant on the government.
It is.
I think there is something to be said for that. A couple of personal questions, I'm sure you won't mind. Do you know how much you're worth?
It's a respectable, it's a respectable number. It's my worth in terms of tax paid cash is less than you think, right? It's a respectable 8-figure number. My real worth is in Williams Corporation, and that is how we realise the value of Williams Corporation. And it gets quite hard when it's such a big company. That's really, when it gets to the size we are, where you're turning over hundreds of millions of dollars a year, you've got hundreds of millions of other people's money in the business, really the only buyer for that is public, where everyone's the buyer, not one individual person.
Does money make you happy?
Money removes a lot of the stresses and adds new stresses, right? So like, I don't need to worry about buying a coffee or buying a business class ticket or buying a nice room in a hotel. I don't have to worry about groceries or buying my partner something nice or making sure my kid goes to a good school. So that's really, really good, right?
Do you buy a lotto ticket?
No, I'd feel robbed. I want to get it through my grit. Remember, we're all the same bag of chemicals, right? And so like the fulfillment you get from, say, buying your first house and it's a cool 2-bedroom, it might be a 60s townhouse in Sprayton, right? But you have that feeling of immense pride. It's the same, if not less, when you walk into like a $6 million house. Because remember, your happiness isn't a scale. Like, just because the house gets more expensive, you don't feel a greater scale of happiness. Right? The pride you felt when you first saw that you had enough to cover 3 months of living expenses, you don't then get more pride by making it 2 years or 2 lifetimes. There's not a scale. We just get the same chemical dopamine hit. But you can shelter yourself from more issues.
I'm going to say some names of people, and you are only allowed to give me a one-word response.
Okay.
Okay. Winston Peters.
Nationalist.
Jacinda Ardern.
Damaging.
Christopher Luxon.
Competent.
Chloe Swarbrick.
Communist.
Matthew Horncastle.
Decent.
How much are you enjoying Christchurch at the moment? I mean, I know you travel a lot.
It's amazing. So people that haven't lived here, it's hard to articulate the earthquakes, right? Like, our whole city was lost. The CBD was closed by the military. We spent our lives between road cones and construction sites and demolitions. People were fighting insurance companies. People were hurt. People were angry. People had compromised sewers and compromised power. And then right when we felt like we were almost there, we then had COVID and we're locked up at home. And it was just this long period of time that was just, it felt like pain. And then now I'll see someone just like laying in a park or having a picnic, and I think like, we did it. You know what I mean? Like, people just are enjoying their lives. People are walking through the parks. You have kids playing in the playground. You have people sitting in a pub having a beer. It feels like we did it. Like, you look around and you're like, yeah, it's not pain anymore. It's we get to enjoy our lives, and it's happy and it's beautiful, and the buildings are lovely and the infrastructure's lovely, and I can drive everywhere in 10 minutes. And the people around me are happy, and you can afford to buy a house, and like, this is how life should be. It feels like we achieved what we set out to do as a city.
It does. Well, congratulations on your success, Matthew. It's nice to catch up with you. I
want to tell one story about you.
Oh, yes. Okay, go.
So, because you spend your whole life asking people stories, and I feel that your channel, people haven't recognised you. So, I met you about 10 years ago. Would that be roughly right?
Yeah, I think you're roughly right. Yeah. I was going to say 4, but I think it is about 10 years ago.
I think it's a decade. I think, yeah, it was a ZB, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I was having an altercation with a councillor about housing policy, okay? And so he was saying things that I considered to be derogatory. We were having a public altercation. And you asked for me to come on and have a live debate with him. And my opinion of you was that you were more left-leaning than me, and that I was sort of going to be ganged up on by both of you, where he was left-leaning and he had his worldview, you were left-leaning, you had your worldview. And I was like, I'm tough enough to deal with it, but this is going to be a nightmare. And also, I had no reason to believe that you were going to be decent and impartial and give fair questions for both sides to have their say. And so I arrived there pretty defensive, and I say my piece and I talk about the facts, and you was so good to deal with. You sat, you listened, you hadn't made your mind up, you listened to my point of view, you listened to his point of view, you made sure he answered the key questions for it to be a proper debate, and you were so decent. And I've always thought that about you. Not that I didn't expect you to be decent, but we had, I don't know your worldviews, but we're different people with different points of view, but you still sat down, listened to my opinion, thought about it, and made up your own mind. And for that, I've always valued you and your work.
That's very nice of you to say that. I think I even remember texting saying you did such a good job. You surprised me by how articulate you are and how articulate you were.
Yeah.
And that